guys do pillow fights and we take headshots. Now, Jim, do you think that Bannon is right? Do the Republicans take headshots? Do they go for headshots with people and the Democrats are out there just fighting pillow fights? Because that's what Michael Moore...
I think it's...
Michael Moore thinks the Democrats are a bunch of wusses, don't have the guts to fight Trump, don't have the... And yet you and many of us think the same thing about our side.
I actually, this might surprise you, Rush, but I actually... I don't mind Michael Moore so much because he is what he is. He shows who he is, what he's about, and I think the guy genuinely is honest about his curiosity about Republicans. I mean, I disagree with everything he is about, but I actually kind of respect him a little bit because of his honesty. I
think you're just falling for the fact that he wears baseball caps to make himself look like he's still from Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, he occasionally comes through San Francisco too. But I just think that the Republicans, it's the duplicitous, sneaky Democrats, the ones that are, like Dianne Feinstein, who plays this nice, she's from San Francisco. I had a lot of respect for Dianne Feinstein as a middle of the road liberal for a lot of years. I had respect for her. I started losing it, in more recently. But it's the sneaky ones that we have to realize, and they're not taking pillow shots; they're taking headshots. And Republicans need to start not just taking headshots; they need to be kicking in the nuts kind of shots. They need to be getting down and dirty into the mud. And I think they should start with Bob Mueller. I think that guy's a bully. My instincts, I'll bet you, are dead on. I'll bet that guy was absolutely a bully in high school. And guess what, Rush? Anything puberty on is now fair game.
It would seem so, especially on the right. Okay, Jim, I'm really glad you called. I could continue this, but I have to take a brief time out. But just to reiterate, I find it fascinating that left-wing activists think their party is as big a bunch of wusses as we think ours are. Now, in their case, it's all because they haven't been able to get rid of Trump, and they're mad that no Democrat, nobody has found a way to stand up to Trump and make Trump stop what he's doing. So they're a bunch of wusses. We think our guys are a bunch of wusses for the reasons that you gave. Anyway, it's all fascinating, but a brief timeout. Back. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Rush Limbaugh behind the golden EIB microphone. Senator Collins has criticized the Democrats' handling of Christine Blasey Ford's accusations. Jeff Flake didn't, and Corker didn't. Susan Collins, Senator Collins, has suggested that they both show up and testify. Look, that's the only way to deal with this. I mean, you might say, well, why should Kavanaugh? He already has. They didn't bring any of this up. Nah, it's come up. There could be something to this. You can't reject it out of hand, no matter how, no matter what your common sense and your political instincts tell you. If she's serious, get her up to that committee today. Get her there tonight. Get her there for testimony tomorrow. Kavanaugh will go. He's already said he'll go anywhere, answer any question whatsoever. The White House is standing by him. So get her in there. Get the accuser in. If the accuser refuses to show up before the committee vote, which is scheduled for Thursday, or was, then that'll carry quite a message. If she's unwilling to show up so that the vote can go off as planned, then this is all about delay. And the delay they want to make till after the midterms because they believe they're going to win the Senate. They believe they're going to win the House. And they can stop Trump from nominating somebody that they don't want to confirm, i.e. somebody like Kavanaugh. If they win the House and Senate, then they're going to start on impeachment proceedings, and then their dreams are going to get rid of Trump in 6 months. So that's what this is about. And if this woman refuses, and here's the thing to look at this, if she's got the goods, if she can prove irrefutably, and I'm told, folks, that she can't even remember the exact date this happened. I got an email from a woman today who said that she was victim of attempted rape. in high school, college. She remembers everything about it. This is her point in the email. 35 years ago, 40 years. She remembers everything about it like it was yesterday. Attempted rape is a traumatic, terrifying thing. You remember. But this babe can't pinpoint the year, the date. She's not sure. She gives a date range, from what I understand. But if she's got incontrovertible evidence that could destroy the nomination, why wouldn't she want to be up there this past July? Why did they hold off on this? As I've said, I think the Democrats know that what they have here is probably not slam dunk for whatever reasons. But if they think they've got whatever it takes to destroy this nomination, wouldn't she want to be here today or tonight or tomorrow and seal the guy's fate once and for all? Yeah, I know. Got to take a break. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're just getting warmed up here.
At the Main Street.
And back we are, revved and ready for yet another exciting broadcast, the busy broadcast hour on the one and only Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Great to have you with us, my friends. As always, the telephone number is 800-282-2882. You want to send an email? The address, ilrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, so Kavanaugh has been saying all that. By the way, Kavanaugh went to the White House today. The White House standing behind Kavanaugh. They are continuing to sponsor his nomination, as we would expect to be the case. This accuser has covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. As recently as last Thursday, she didn't want to be known. She didn't want this carried any further than the letter she wrote Senator Feinstein. She didn't want the FBI looking into it. She didn't want any part of it. And then on the eve of the vote that would lead to the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, Dianne Feinstein held the letter. I got this letter here. I got this letter from a woman who's unspecified horrible things happen to her, and I've had it for a while here, and I think I'm going to refer this to the FBI for investigation. The FBI took a look at it. One of their first things I saw, anyway, was the FBI was not going to investigate it. And it didn't take long for a woman who did not want to be known, and the details of her story she didn't want known, to now she has said she wants to come testify as well. Senator Grassley, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, has said, well, we're going to treat her with all the respect we would treat anybody else who's been invited to testify. We're going to bring her up here. We're extending the invitation. There's some talk that she might want to do her testifying behind closed doors. Now, that is not usually afforded. If you're going to do something like this, you testify public, under oath. Now, where it stands now is that Kavanaugh has said he'll go anywhere, anytime, to tell anybody whatever it is they want to know about this. He maintains he didn't do it. He didn't even know who this woman was. He hasn't the slightest idea what this is about, which is very close to what Justice Thomas said, except that he knew Anita Hill. He couldn't figure it out because Anita Hill would practically had a crush on him, was following him everywhere he went. Every new job he got, she tried to tag along. In this case, Kavanaugh is saying he didn't even know who she was. It didn't, and he's not sure now that he knows who she is. Kavanaugh has a friend, a guy named Mark Judge, who was, according to the accuser, in the room at the same time Kavanaugh was doing the nasty. Allegedly doing the nasty. And this guy says it didn't happen. I'm telling you, whatever she says, I don't remember a thing of this. None of this happened. But the problem is that Mark Judge has written a book about what a drunkard he was in high school. And reliving his days about how they were all just drunk and happy and doing whatever whenever they wanted to and so forth. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a weakening of his testimony here when he says he doesn't remember, because he admits that at similar times in high school he was one who consumed significant quantities of adult beverage. So I still maintain, the committee hearing vote, the Judiciary Committee, the way these things normally happen, the Judiciary Committee votes on a nominee. And if the nominee passes the committee, then the vote goes to the full Senate. Mitch McConnell, if he wanted to, the turtle, he could go for a full-fledged Senate vote without a committee vote. He can do that. He is the Senate leader. So he can schedule a vote on the nominee whether there is a Judiciary Committee vote or not. The question then becomes, would he violate tradition and the gentlemanly courtly rules of the Senate in such a fashion? And if he did, what would be the outcome of that vote? Would there be so many senators, courtly and gentlemanly, outraged at this violation of Senate etiquette, they would vote against the nominee just for that reason alone? Where do we stand on senators? Well, we've had the brave and courageous Senators Corker and Jeff Flake at the first opportunity they could said, whoa, we need to pull back. I don't think I can vote for this nominee now until I learn more. Now, with both these guys, I'm pretty safe in saying that what is governing them is their never-Trumper status, their genuine, undiluted animus for Donald Trump, and thus their desire to screw with his every plan, be it a judicial appointment or be it an agenda item or policy. If these guys can, and Flake, of course, is leaving the Senate. He would not have been reelected had he tried, probably would have lost even in the primary. But there's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of lingering bitterness and rancor in the Republican Party over the fact that Trump won. And there's still an effervescing desire on the part of some Republicans to pay Trump back and to deny Trump any victory so that they can join the Democrats in trying to get rid of Donald Trump. But every Republican vote would be needed in order to confirm Kavanaugh. If they lose two, now we're down, 50-50. There's some red state senators that were going to vote for Kavanaugh. And particularly if it appeared that Kavanaugh was going to be confirmed, Schumer was going to quietly tell a bunch of red state Democrats that if it'll help you in your reelection, go ahead and vote for the guy. So we were looking at potentially 55 or 56 votes for Kavanaugh, which would include some Democrats like Joe Manchin from West Virginia. But if Corker and Flake peel off, then that will give these red state Democrats all the cover they need to also peel off. And we could now be beyond the point where the vote of the vice president would put Kavanaugh over the top. So, look, if she's going to make the allegations, I guess you have to bring her up and let her testify. The question then becomes, will she? She says she wants to. But does anybody think she's actually going to show up this week and do it? The committee vote is Thursday. They want to get Kavanaugh confirmed before the midterms. The Republicans do, the Senate, and the Republicans run the Senate right now. So if they want the vote to occur before the midterms, that's when it's going to occur, if the Republicans maintain testicular fortitude. We'll just have to wait and see. The Democrats want to delay this until after the midterms for the obvious reason they think they're going to win everything. They think they're going to win the House, and now they think they're going to win the Senate because of the generic ballot polling. And if they win both, then they're going to impeach Trump within 6 months of the new Congress being sworn in January. And there won't be any new nominees because they're going to block anything Trump would send up there because they are still seething over Merrick Garland. Barack Hussein nominated Garland to replace Justice Scalia after he passed away. And the Republicans said, wait a minute, we're not going to have hearings in an election year while we might have a new president get elected. Hillary might lose. We're going to wait for a new president to have this nominee. Democrats were fit to be tied because the Senate seat remained vacant for close to a year. Then, of course, Trump won, and that gave him the opportunity to nominate the replacement for Scalia, and he nominated Neil Gorsuch. The Democrats have been seething ever since. And so calls for a quick appearance by the alleged victim, demands that she show up this week and get this testimony over and done with. The Democrats are going to say, we're in no hurry. You weren't in any hurry. In order to confirm Merrick Garland, you delayed, and eventually his nomination had to be pulled. So we have a combination of things here. We have just standard, ordinary, everyday operational political strategy going on here, combined with an attempt yet again by the left to destroy a decent person and his family. And that would be Brett Kavanaugh. The Democrats don't trust to be able to win on politics alone. They need, and it's not just Kavanaugh, they need to destroy anybody credible who opposes them. They need to ruin them. As such, I don't think decent people quite know how to deal with this. Decent people don't spend their day strategizing like this. And as such, they don't end up being prepared for it. By definition, decent people are not prepared for this kind of thing. Not that they're ignorant to it. It just, they don't go through each and every day studying and prepping on how to get ready for the next smear job from the Democrat Party. A couple of more little factoids about the accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. As I mentioned to you, she is a left-wing political activist. She has worn one of those vagina hats at some anti-Trump marches. She's taken part in many events opposing President Trump, including a science march in California last year, where she wore one of those vagina hats at the January 2017 Women's March. She is cited in a San Jose Mercury News article as wearing the hat at the march, which the newspaper said was held because people were angered by the Trump administration's proposed cuts to research. She also has signed a letter fighting Trump's border enforcement efforts. Christine Blasey Ford signed a letter fighting Trump's zero-tolerance policy at the U.S.-Mexico border, the ACLU. An Open Borders advocacy group letter was written and sent to Department of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen and Jeff Sessions in June. Christine Blasey Ford, psychology professor, signed the ACLU letter as Christine Blasey, Ph.D. psychologist. So clearly she's a political activist. She's an angry political activist. She's much more than just a victim of alleged attempted rape. She seems to be a little bit more politically attuned and aware than was Anita Hill. Now, remember Anita Hill, they had to drag her out of wherever she was. She did not voluntarily come forward. It was the wife of Illinois Senator Paul Simon, working with Howard Metzenbaum, that went out there and dragged Anita Hill up, and they coached her, and they got her fired up eventually. But they went out and found her at the last minute. This woman apparently sends the letter all on her own. But look, it all boils down to just what do we want to believe about the left? And the idea that any of this is spontaneous, needs to be rejected. None of it is. The Democrats have been holding this. They've been holding it for use at precisely this time. And I'm not sure I believe that Christine Blasey Ford never wanted to be made known. I don't believe she didn't want to go public. I don't believe that she sent a letter to Feinstein and then said, please do not do anything with this. Please do not forward this to the FBI. Please do not name me. Why send it? I don't believe any of this. Anyway, brief timeout. We'll get back here into the phones. I know a lot of you want to weigh in full board. All that coming up. We get back.
Be prepared.
Okay, back to the phones we go to Bath, Michigan. This is Ray. Welcome, sir. It's great to have you. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point, and it ties right in with the not prepared thing you were saying a moment ago here. And it's that this seems like it's lacking a lot of context, because what we've got is half the context, where we've been told a pretty ugly story about how she maybe was forced down onto a bed. But what's the end? If you put it together, it sounds like it ended with him not raping her, not doing horrible things to her, getting off the bed and respecting her boundaries. You know, in high school, all kinds of stuff happens, and sometimes guys and gals are on a different page. But it doesn't sound like, if you tell the story in its full context, that he did anything all too bad. It sounds like he didn't do a lot of bad things, and I think that's why Kavanaugh didn't want to bring this forward, because it really isn't anything in its full context. It's an assault from 36 years ago.
You think this is why Kavanaugh didn't bring it up? You think Kavanaugh remembered this but thought it's not worth mentioning because...
No, I'm sorry. Dianne Feinstein. I'm a little nervous on the radio.
Oh, you think Feinstein knows that there's really nothing to this, and that's why she was reluctant to bring it forth except when there was no other option.
Right, and if you finish the story, well, there's a lot of horrible ways it could end, but they're not leading with that he did those horrible things. They're leading with that something inappropriate happened, but in the end, it sounds like there's a lot he didn't do.
Well, but it's
wait.
It's ending with her being completely traumatized with PTSD and finally going to a therapist 6 years ago. After holding it in for all of those years, she finally went to a therapist. Her husband was in the therapy with her. She told sordid details. Did she mention Kavanaugh's name to the therapist? Or I don't think she did. It came out later. But anyway, the point is, whether he did anything or not is not the point. She said she was ruined by it. That's all it takes. This is the Me Too environment, don't forget. And a lot of Democrats have bitten the dust here. We've got Harvey Weinstein. We got Les Moonves. There's a whole bunch of them that have been taken out. The Democrats are thinking it's time for some vers visa here, among many other things. The Me Too movement's claimed a lot of people, most of them Democrats. And the objective here is not what really happened. It's, in this case, it's how did she feel? If there was no completion of this abuse or whatever, but she still was psychologically scarred for the rest of her life by it, then it must have been typical brutish predator male behavior that we are not going to tolerate in this cisgender patriarchal society anymore, you see.
The bar has to be higher than things that happened in high school 36 years ago that did not get reported as crimes or weren't serious enough to yield reporting 30 years following that.
What bar has? There is no bar. We're talking about the Democrat Party here. We're talking, if there's a bar, it's how low it goes. Now, I know what you're saying.
Yep. I know what you're saying, yeah.
But, I mean, you've got Republican senators already caving and flowing off the reservation on this. They're already accepting it. Or a host of other. Look, this is my point. See here, this guy Ray from Bath, Michigan, is a decent guy. It's perfectly reasonable to say, high school? Are you kidding me? You know what happens when hormones are flowing in high school and young people are just discovering things and messing around, playing around, and so forth? The bar's got to be higher than that. There's not a person among us who was clean and pure as the wind-driven snow in high school or any other time in our lives, is his point. But you see, that's all mitigated by the fact that the left, the Democrat Party, has an army to carry forth and conduct their war, and that's the media. They've got weapons upon weapons. The media fires them constantly, day in and day out. And in the process, a circumstance has been created. A narrative has been created that men have gotten away with being brutes and predators, with mistreating women for centuries. And it's about time it came to a stop. And wherever the left says they find it, they're going to stamp it out. There's no statute of limitations. If somebody claimed that Kavanaugh did whatever he did in kindergarten, the Democrats would be doing the same thing with it today as they're doing with this. Folks, I should share something with you that I heard this morning from a secret source, and it is, just take this for what it's worth, that the mindset today at the U.S. Senate is that this is just a predictable and expected little speed bump, and that Kavanaugh is going to end up being confirmed, and that everybody knows it. Just going to have to go through some motions here while the Democrats. This is a Republican source. Actually, I've heard it from two different places. There's also a leftist commentator who shared with me that while everybody's making a big deal about this, that the quiet money on Capitol Hill is that this really isn't going to change anything. It's just the last gasp. Just sharing that with you. That, you know, Grassley was ready to go. Grassley's initial reaction to this kind of indicates that mindset really is the case. Grassley's original mindset, his original reaction to this was, well, if we're going to last-minute stuff like this, we can't allow this to derail the scheduling and the normal functioning of the Senate. Last-minute stuff like this, unconfirmed, untested. That was his initial reaction. Now he's saying, well, if she wants to testify, she will, of course, be allowed to testify according to several precedents and Senate rules and decorum and so forth. So I think it's probably true that even now the general mindset is that this is not going to derail Kavanaugh. But I think that's subject to change hour by hour. And you might also say that these people are pretty naive if they think that, and that could be true too. But I wanted to pass it on to you. What else? Well, let me get back to the phones. I wanted to make this point anyway, and it's come up right on schedule. It's Frank in Atlanta. Welcome, sir. You're next on the EIB network. Hi.
An honor to speak to you, Rush, after decades of listening to you. I'll get to my point. Read an article today on the federalistpapers.org, and they say that they're saying that the Kavanaugh's mother, who's a judge, was the judge involved in foreclosing on the parents' home of this lady that's the accuser in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I'm curious if you've heard that. They're showing pictures of the docket, and
oh yeah, I've got all that, and I've seen it two different places. And if you know, there's a reporter and columnist for townhall.com named Kurt Schlichter. Or Schlichter. Anyway, he's looked into it. He confirms that it's every bit true. Here are the details of this. Christine Ford Blasey, or Christine Blasey Ford, her parents were defendants in a 1996 foreclosure case, and it was Brett Kavanaugh's mother who was the judge. Christine Ford's parents, Paula K. Blasey and Ralph G. Blasey, were the defendants in a foreclosure case in Maryland, 1996. The judge was Martha G. Kavanaugh, who was none other than the mother of Brett Kavanaugh. There was an ongoing judgment, it appears, starting at least in 1990. 7 cases culminating in a foreclosure case in 1996 for which Martha Kavanaugh was the judge. There was a 1982 contract case but the details have not been put together there. It appears that her father, Ralph G. Blasey, was an attorney. There are tons of cases that reference that. His relationship professionally with Kavanaugh should be looked at as well. And then there are screenshots of the court documents here. So what do we have here? We have the accuser is, by her own admission, I mean by her own bio, and she has spent the weekend scrubbing her social media sites. She tried to erase that she is an anti-Trumpist activist. She tried to delete and erase that she's a left-wing activist. She wants to be seen as a college professorette who was traumatized by your average run-of-the-mill white guy brute back in high school. And it turns out that this average run-of-the-mill white guy brute now is nominated to be on the Supreme Court, and she's outraged. And so she's doesn't know what to do. Will come forth or not. She sent Senator Feinstein a letter, but didn't know whether to go public with it or not. But, gee, this is not so unfair. This guy brutes me, and now he's going to be in the Supreme Court. She doesn't want anybody to know that she wore one of those vagina hats at an anti-Trump march in January of 2017. She doesn't want anybody to know that she was an activist signing an ACLU letter opposing Trump's attempts to shore up the southern border. She doesn't want anybody to know of her left-wing activism, but we do. She's a far-left social justice warrior professor, and she has a grudge. Doesn't mean she's a liar, but she has a grudge. Now, you combine who this woman is with the drive-by media and Dianne Feinstein's months-long holding of all these ancient allegations for political advantage, and it is pretty clear that we have an orchestrated Democrat smear right out of the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas playbook. They have no proof. They don't have a pattern, by the way. This is the only allegation of its kind about Brett Kavanaugh. They don't have anything. Every woman that's ever worked with Kavanaugh has sung his praises. When this woman made known her allegations and when her identity was forthcoming, women to the tune of 65 of them signed a letter in refutation what this woman was saying, that this is not Brett Kavanaugh. He's not capable of this. He didn't do this. He doesn't think of women this way, doesn't treat women this way. There is no pattern. With Bill Clinton, we had a pattern. And they tried to sweep it under the rug. With Harvey Weinstein, we had a pattern. With Les Moonves, we have a pattern. With all these Democrats that have bitten the dust, we have a pattern. We don't even have a pattern with Kavanaugh. We have a one-time allegation from 35 years ago, from high school. So what the Democrats have is something, again, absent any evidence. We don't have any evidence. We've got her word versus his. We don't have a shred of evidence. In fact, we've got a third person in the room, Mark Judge, friend of Kavanaugh, says it didn't happen. He's befuddled by it. He doesn't remember any of this. Kavanaugh says, I never heard of this woman until today. I don't know who this woman is. I've never met this woman. I don't know where this thing happened. The woman can't pinpoint the exact year it happened, by the way. And from what I'm told, she's not sure where it happened. Let me find that email. I got an email from somebody who wanted to weigh in on this. I may have to find it after the break. But it's a woman who had this happen to her, and she remembers everything about it. And she doesn't believe somebody who really felt like they're being raped and abused in this way would forget so many salient details. Anyway, so we don't have any evidence. We don't have any pattern. We have the old Democrat Party stand by the seriousness of the charge, which mandates in their world an investigation. And it's the same thing. If Republicans cave to this depravity, they're guarantee to get more of it in the future. They will be enabling sick, depraved, indecent leftist zealots. It's time to stand up to this. The Republicans stood up to it with Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill, and it was none other than the late Arlen Specter, shocking everybody. It was Arlen Specter who blew up the entire Democrat case. He ended up becoming a Democrat later in his life. I don't think he ever lived it down, but he was, at that moment in time, he was awesome in defense of Justice Thomas. And in defense of the Senate for what was being done to it by this late-breaking thing with Anita Hill, nobody ever heard of, in this light, with these kind of allegations. It's the same thing here. And now we find out that Kavanaugh's mother was the foreclosure judge on property owned by Christine Blasey Ford's parents. So there couldn't be any kind of a grudge there, right? Let me take a brief break, my friends. Back before you know it. The email that I received today, and remember, this is anonymous, so it's signed, but anonymity is requested. Dear Mr. Limbaugh, when I was in college, 19 years old, I went on a date with a guy I didn't know. He was older. He was a grad student. Afterwards, he took me to his apartment. He tried to rape me. I got away unscathed. Siri. Hey, Siri, stop. Hey, Siri, stop. I asked you guys if my home pod was... Well, there was any... All right, well, anyway, now I start again. Dear Mr. Limbaugh, when I was in college, 19 years old, I went on a date with a guy I did not know. He was older, a grad student. Afterwards, he took me to his apartment and tried to rape me. I got away unscathed, but I remember precisely where it happened. I don't remember his name, as I never had another encounter with him, and I did not know him before the date. But to not remember the house, to not remember the street, to not remember what the room looked like, to not remember where it happened, is inconceivable to me. Kavanaugh's accuser does not remember the house where the party was. Well, I remember, Mr. Limbaugh, where I was accosted. And Mr. Limbaugh, I'm proud to say the experience did not scar me for years afterward. In fact, I was proud that I had figured out how to get away. I was proud that I sent the guy packing. I was proud that I did not succumb to any psychological or emotional trauma. Signed, XX. And I know the identity. I know who sent it, but the person requests anonymity. And admittedly, it's sent in refutation of Christine Blasey Ford. Or is it Ford Blasey? Well, whatever. Back to the phones. Panama City, Florida. Ron, you're next. It's great to have you with us, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, Rush. Thank you. Many dittos. I just wanted to comment that I think it's time to examine Dianne Feinstein's motivation and her involvement in this entire accusation. I believe that she's so far behind her own liberal base in California that she's resorting to egregious political tactics just to regain her standing and regain the graces of liberal idiocracy in California. Taking down or being part of taking down a SCOTUS nominee would certainly put her in that limelight with California liberals. The Me Too allegations have removed all complicity on the part of women and the female accusers, so that any such allegation, even if it's not against a SCOTUS nominee, get automatically promoted to headline status and really take precedent over rule of law and common decency. I think that Feinstein's motivation here is personal, trying to save her own political life, her own political lifetime career in Washington. I'd appreciate your comments.
Well, I mean, now who's her opponent in California? She beat back Kevin DeLeon, right?
Well, yes, she beat him she got 2.9 million votes. However, she has been rebuked by her own party earlier this year.
Yeah, but that's California. They're not going to elect a Republican to run against her, or a Republican. No. They're not.
Certainly not. But I do believe that to be within the graces of her own political establishment, her own backyard, is necessary for any liberal politician in California.
Well, look, I don't dispute that that there is a personal benefit to her in California with local politicians, because she had a fairly, for her, bitter primary fight against Kevin. His name is Kevin Leon, but he had it changed to Kevin De Leon to sound more worldly out there. And he got close, and she was ripped to shreds during the Democrat Party convention out in California. But she prevailed, and she's going to have her 6-year term. I think this is what it is. I think if there's that benefit to her, it's secondary. I think it's the primary reason she's doing this. It may be equal. It may be a twofer for her. But every bit as much of this is about derailing a Trump nominee, keeping a conservative jurist off the Supreme Court, because they think they're going to win the Senate. You cannot erase that, folks. They think that the Senate is theirs. They think the House is theirs. They're believing all the pre-election polls. They are of the belief that none of what they're doing here is causing any kind of a backlash among Republican voters, Trump supporters. They think that they're beating back everybody here. They're going to win this in a landslide. They're going to win the House in a landslide. They're going to win the Senate. And if that happens, they're going to get rid of Trump in 6 months or render him impotent. And this is what they're looking at. And so if that's the case, why let Trump have this nominee? Why in the world let Trump stack the court? This would make the court 5-4 conservative, and he's not a moderate. He's replacing Kennedy, who was. This guy, Kavanaugh, is Scalia. He's Gorsuch. My only point is, folks, that the Democrats, in order to do this, Dianne Feinstein, in order to do this, they have to personally destroy. They've lost the ability to defeat him. They could not stop him in the confirmation battle. They could not stop him at the Senate Judiciary Committee. They could not stop him with witnesses. So now they're out to destroy him and destroy his family and destroy his life and destroy his career and destroy his future. And even if he survives this and is on the court, they will continue to destroy him with books and movies and all that. I have to take a break. Don't go away. We'll be back.
Limbaugh, bringing America.
Greetings, my friends. Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. And as always, half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Telephone number is 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. I checked the email during the break. You don't sound mad about it. My friends, I spent the first part of the hour telling you how mad I was back in 1990 when George Bush had appointed Clarence Thomas. Look, I don't want to be too redundant here. I realize people are in and out all day long, but back when the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill stuff happened, remember, there was this program, and don't misunderstand me here. This is not ego speaking. I'm trying to give you a factual, historical lay of the land. This program was it. There were some other conservative talk shows that have come up on radio, but Fox News had not started yet. The blogosphere was not anywhere near what it was going to be. This is 1990. People are still using CompuServe, for crying out loud, or AOL. CNN is the only cable network with the 3 networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and it was a full court press to do exactly what's being done to Kavanaugh right now, destroy Clarence Thomas. And believe me, I was absorbed. I did nothing but refute everything the Democrats were saying every day of those confirmation hearings. Notice None of this that we're hearing about Kavanaugh has happened during any of the testimony, any of the confirmation. This woman did not come forward then. They dragged Anita Hill out of wherever she was. It was Paul Simon's wife and Howard Metzenbaum. They got together and they yanked her out, and they had to talk her into doing it. Everybody denies that today because they want to make it look like she was this committed activist back then. But they had to drag her out and do it. They had to coach her and prepare her for testimony and so forth. But at least she testified, and Clarence Thomas got a chance to react to it with the famous high-tech lynching speech that he gave that put everybody in the Senate on this committee in their place. This is happening after all the testimony. I'm livid by this. I'm livid that decent people don't seem to have any kind of option dealing with this. You can't, just in the essence of decency, you won't find any more decent human being today than Brett Kavanaugh or his family. They are a threat to nobody. They haven't threatened anybody. They've not destroyed anybody. The left could not defeat Kavanaugh during the constitutionally enumerated period of time to do so, and that would be the confirmation hearings. They struck out. They bombed out. And so now they're dredging this up from the abject sewer. Of course I'm livid about it. I'm somewhat at my... a little frustrated by the fact that it works. This stuff in a sane world, the American people would be rising up in indignation and outrage over what Dianne Feinstein is attempting to pull here. And I think they did when they elected Trump, by the way. How come the Access Hollywood video didn't destroy Trump? How come none of those usual Democrat attempts to destroy Trump did not destroy him? He still won. He got elected. But this is it. This is their playbook. They go back to it over and over and over again. And their playbook involves destroying people. Yes, it has me so mad I can't see straight. But just coming here and acting mad isn't going to get anything done. Because it is actually happening. And so I find it despicable. I'm outraged that more people in Washington don't. To people in Washington, this is the game. In the news business, man, this is exciting. This is ratings today. Never mind the fact that a man and his family are under the guillotine and subject to being destroyed simply because he has achieved enough in his life that he's qualified to be on the U.S. Supreme Court. In Washington today, that means it's open season to try and destroy the guy. Now, you might say, well, he knew that, Rush. They know. I'm sure everybody knows it. Does that make it right? There isn't any indignation. In fact, if you go to a lot of places in conservative media, you'll find people making sure that we're not unfair to the accuser and that we're open-minded and that we really understand that she could be telling the truth and it's a horrible thing if she is and we must need to get to the bottom of it. But, and then they go on with what they really think, but they feel it necessary to make sure nobody gets the wrong idea that they think Kavanaugh should be sent packing if any of this is true. If any of this is true, they're asking us to believe one heck of a lot for this to be true. And if this woman wants to come testify, it's got to happen now. The Republicans run this show, and they need to make this happen pronto. You know, I said we have a lot of audio sound bites, and we do, but none of them, or not none of them, but some are not related to this, and yet they're still good. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get started with them. We'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll get back to all this with your phone calls because we got a full board of people that want to weigh in. Your host was in the news again. It happens every weekend. Actually, it's Thursday night on the RT network. That's a Russian television network. It's an international TV network funded by the Soviets, the Russians. And they had an interview with Larry King. And he's speaking with somebody in Chattanooga about, let's see. Oh, it's Larry King's show. I take it back. Larry King has a show on the Russian TV. That's what it is. And Larry King is talking to a radio host from Chattanooga about conservative claims of bias at Facebook and Google. By the way, speaking of which, have you heard the latest outrage about Google? Google, in order to do business in China, had to accede to Chicom demands, and they did. And one of the things Google did, they built a prototype of the search engine, the Google search engine that will be used in China. They built a prototype for the Chicom government that links every user's searches to their personal phone numbers. So the Chicom government will be able to know who everybody in China is by virtue of their phone number and what they are searching. And Google, in order to do business in China, had to agree to this. The Chicom government can now monitor people's search queries and will have their phone number as a means of either reaching and intimidating them or just identifying them. And Google didn't think twice. Okay, fine, is that what you want? We'll do it. Now, if they're willing to stand up in partnership with a pure totalitarian communist regime like the Chicoms, why wouldn't they if one were elected here? If a Democrat someday is elected and wants this exact kind of data from everybody using Google search, you think Google would do it for a fellow Democrat president? They're showing they'll do it for the Chicoms, and they'll do it because that's what they have to do to be in business in China. So anyway, there's legitimate outrage amongst conservatives at the bias and the did you hear Jack Dorsey? Did you hear what Jack Dorsey, the founder and the CEO of Twitter, did you hear what he said about Twitter last week? He said that conservatives employed at Twitter literally feel unsafe to express their views at work for fear of what will be done to them by other liberal employees. The Twitter CEO admitted this. It was on the Recode Decode blog, which is part of the Vox empire, used to be part of the Wall Street Journal. He admitted it, that conservative employees at Twitter do not feel safe expressing their political opinions at work. So anyway, Larry King, with his show on the Russian television network, is asking a Chattanooga radio host about conservative claims of bias at Facebook and Google. Larry King said, now reportedly, Attorney General Sessions is exploring a potential investigation of social media companies because of bias against conservatives. What do you make about that?
Up until the late 1980s, we had a law on the books in the United States called the Fairness Doctrine. And by law, that required radio stations, TV stations to be fair and balanced. Well, it was Republicans, not Democrats. Republicans did away with that law. So I find it ironic that 30 years later, they're complaining about bias with Facebook and bias with Google. Look, if we want to solve that problem, bring back the Fairness Doctrine, apply it to all media, including social media, but short of that, suck it up. I mean, you reap what you sow. If Facebook and Google are biased against Republicans, well, guess what? Fox News is biased against Democrats. Rush Limbaugh is biased against Democrats.
Okay, Fairness Doctrine. It is clear that many people talking about it don't really know what it was or what it is. By the way, here's Larry's reaction to that. It's only 8 seconds, but we'll get it in.
I know. I lived with the Fairness Doctrine for a lot of years, and I'll tell you, it worked. We gave equal time. What was wrong with giving equal time?
Hey, Larry, the Fairness Doctrine's not about equal time. You did an interview show. You needed guests to get your show done. You had guests from all over the place. The Fairness Doctrine was never going to apply to you anyway. The Fairness Doctrine had nothing to do with equal time. Got so fed up explaining this. And the reason, because everybody says that if it weren't for Reagan lifting the Fairness Doctrine, this show would have never happened. It's bohunk. The Fairness Doctrine was in place when this show actually started in Sacramento on KFBK. And it was the same show then as it is now. There is no bias here. Bias is when you hide what you're trying to persuade. We don't make any pretenses here about the fact that I'm conservative and believe in that. I don't try to hide the fact that I think liberalism sucks and is dangerous and destructive. There's no bias. There's no attempt to fool anybody here. This program is the epitome of upfront honesty. There's no deceit. There's no lying. There's no misdirection. There's none of this that is commonplace everywhere else in the drive-by media. The fairness doctrine didn't say that if I have a 30-minute monologue ripping Democrats, that I have to bring Democrats in for 30 minutes and let them react to it. That's the equal time doctrine. It's for media in politics. The fairness doctrine had nothing to do. The reason it was lifted is because it was ambiguous, difficult to enforce. It was all about balance. And radio stations have to balance to get their license approved. The way radio stations do it, say you have my show on every day, 3 hours a week. It doesn't mean that it has to be followed by 3 hours of commie bastards saying whatever they say. It just says that at some time, if you want to measure balance on a broadcast day, if you want to measure balance in a broadcast week, if you want to measure balance in a month, it just says that you have to bring some kind of programming that's a little different anytime you want. You don't have to balance 3 hours for 3 hours, guest for guest. And that's the fairness doctrine, or the equal time doctrine. It's not applicable to a program like this. That would be a problem if the equal, but the fairness doctrine was nothing that these people think that it is. The way radio stations balance, look at us. We're the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, and we don't have another show. Aren't we in violation of the fairness? Well, no, because it's not in place now, but we wouldn't be anyway because we're not a radio station license holder. But a station carries this show for 3 hours. It just means, which is 15 hours a week, it just means that at some point they have to carry some liberal programming or some opposition programming whenever. It doesn't have to be right after. It doesn't have to be at the same time. It doesn't have to be measured in that kind of way. It's just, it was nebulous, and that's why it was lifted. As I say, I worked under it for 3 years in Sacramento, and it did not impair me in the slightest. I had one day, some NAACP leader wanted to come in and complain about something I'd said. I said, come on in, man. Liberals are afraid to talk to me anyway. I said, come on in. And he spent 30 minutes talking about Senegal and how much he loves Senegal. And we have so much to learn from Senegal. And I tried to make it interesting. I did my best to make it interesting. But the fairness doctrine is not a suicide pact. And that's how they want to use it. They want to employ the fairness doctrine to basically muzzle people. It's typical of the left. They cannot deal with us intellectually, and they cannot deal with us politically. So they set out to destroy us. Whether it's Kavanaugh, whether it's Clarence Thomas, whether it was Romney, whether it's Trump, it doesn't matter. And we do not try to destroy anybody. That's not the objective. We got our jollies defeating them. We got our jollies educating people to who they really are, people on the left. But destroying people, destroying their livelihoods, their reputations, ruining them, never. That's something exclusively owned and operated by them. I keep waiting for the American people to figure it out. How could it not be more obvious? But then I have to stop and pinch myself. The media is not reporting this Kavanaugh thing in any way, factually, fairly. And if people only watch the media, they're not going to learn half of the story here. Okay, quick timeout. I had 4 or 5 other sound bites I wanted to play, but Larry King got me all worked up again about what he doesn't know about broadcasting. Anyway, back here in just a second.
Have you downloaded Rush's radio show app yet?
We stream thanks to Simply Safe. This is the home security company that we often refer to here. The last published figures show that more than 2 million people are now benefiting from Simply Safe. 2 million. That's a heck of a startup. Simply Safe's a home security system that's easy to install, it's easy to operate, and effective at protecting you. Simply Safe accomplishes all of this by using Wi-Fi instead of wires. Wi-Fi to enclose the perimeter of your home. Every door and window gets a wireless sensor that lasts for years. It emits a signal to the Simply Safe base station. That same base station connects the motion detectors, the sound detectors, the HD cameras, the sirens. That wherever you deploy them, they all connect Wi-Fi to that base station. The end result is a perfectly outfitted system that can be modified over the course of time as you see fit. You can add sensors, you can upgrade them, you can add motion detectors, whatever you want, because there aren't any wires. You don't know what a big deal that is in so many ways. There's less to go wrong. There's no construction necessary, no remodeling to install it. It makes it easy. The best part of all is that you can do it. The empowering of yourself to install your system increases the awareness you have of it, the knowledge of how it works. Simply Safe pre-tests, pre-configures every element of what you order. It arrives in the box, ready to go. Tested, all you have to do is deploy it. If you want 24/7 monitoring, that connects your home to the fire department or police department. That's only $14.99 a month, and it's per month. There's no contract. Go online to see all this. You'll be dazzled. You'll be amazed how much it does not cost to boot. SimplySafeUSA.com. If you don't have a house, you want to secure an apartment or condo, you can. You'll save 10% off the price of your system at that site, SimplySafeUSA.com. No offer code or anything else needed. Just SimplySafeUSA.com. Peter in Reading, Connecticut. Glad you waited, sir. Hi. Peter.
Mega Dittos. I'm a first-time caller. Been listening to you, I guess, since like 89 or 90.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. You're a lifer.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I guess so. And I've started reading Rush Revere with my 8-year-old daughter, and she loves it. My wife, really actually wonders how you, is a teacher, and she said, it's a special talent to be able to get through to young kids. And, she was very impressed with the whole story.
Well, thank you. God bless you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway, first point I wanted to make is I actually think these accusations are kind of good news because it shows the Democrats are out of ideas. They've got to go back to the, old Anita Hill accusations to, so it seems to me if they can't come up with anything new, that's actually good for our side.
Well, theoretically, but in the process, you have two Republicans that have peeled off, and the nomination may have gone with them. So the Democrats haven't lost anything here. If that actually happens, I know you have another point that's interesting, too. Hang on through the break, and we'll get to it quickly when we get back. Okay, back to Peter in Reading, Connecticut. You think this has to do with Mitt Romney? How does this have to do with Mitt Romney?
Okay, well, I was, reading a theory on the internet, and I wanted to get your opinion on it, but it's saying the timing of this 2012, psychiatrist meeting is kind of interesting because going back to 2012 was the re-election. Romney was widely expected to be the Republican nominee, and according to a March 2012 article by Jeffrey Toobin in the New Yorker, Kavanaugh was widely expected to be Romney's Supreme Court pick. And at the time, they were very concerned about the Affordable Care Act. Kavanaugh had voted against it on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And you really don't get more establishment Republican than Kavanaugh. So, so this theory is that really they were concerned about Ginsburg, whether that she wouldn't retire, and they were afraid she might die in office. So, so basically, the theory is that this is really a preemptive attack in case Obama didn't win in 2012.
But she didn't come forward in 2012.
She didn't come forward, but she was getting it on the record in 2012.
Oh, you mean at the psychiatrist's office?
Right.
At the therapist's office, getting it on the record. So you think they were going to take Kavanaugh out back then if Romney had won and nominated him?
yeah, if Romney had won and then Ginsburg, for some reason, she was struggling with cancer, and if Ginsburg, for some reason, died in office, and he appointed, and if Romney had won and nominated.
But look, there are a lot of ifs here,
Court.
and the problem is that they almost didn't bring it up now. I mean, if they've had it, I get the theory that they've had it in the deck since 2012. And if Romney had beaten Obama and Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg had something unfortunate happen, that they were going to try to destroy Kavanaugh, and so the purpose here was to get her story on record with a shrink, a psychiatrist, a therapist, or what have you, for use if Romney had been elected. Okay, fine. But they didn't bring this forward until they had exhausted every other attempt to destroy Kavanaugh. And if they've been worried about Kavanaugh all those years, and I don't doubt that they have, I mean, he is who he is, and he's the kind of judge that he is, I think they have doubts and qualms about the woman's story. And I think one of the reasons Di-Fi sat on it is that I don't think they want to put this woman up in public. I really don't. I think they're going to try to engineer her testifying in private, behind closed doors, because of the trauma and her desire to remain private. I appreciate the call, Peter. Let's grab audio soundbite number 8. This is Chuck U. Schumer was on The View today speaking with Maud Behar, and they're having a discussion about Kavanaugh and what to do about all this.
I believe Professor Ford. I think she's credible, and I think when the investigation is finished and when she testifies and Judge Kavanaugh testifies, I think a majority of senators will find her credible, and I never thought Kavanaugh should get appointed, because he was picked by a president who said, I'm only going to pick someone who repeals Roe v. Wade, and vetted by a group whose mission was that. The president said, I'm only going to pick someone who repeals health care, and he was vetted by another group, the Heritage Foundation. So I said he shouldn't be on the bench before this, but now we got to get to the bottom of this.
Now, Trump never said he's going to pick people that are only anti-Roe versus Wade. It's the exact opposite. He said there wasn't going to be a litmus. These people just lie through their teeth left and right by this. And here's Schumer. I think she'll be credible, but you hear Schumer, whatever this guy, but we can't tolerate this. You lost, Senator. You don't get to pick the nominee in this circumstance. You lost. Hillary lost, and you don't run the Senate, and you don't get to pick the nominee. Now, they exhausted everything they had in trying to destroy Kavanaugh, and they didn't have anything. They cannot question his qualifications. They cannot question his readiness. They cannot question his fitness. They did everything they could. They tried to bully Susan Collins into abandoning her support for him. And when all else failed, they go to the bottom of the deck and get this. And they get it for all intents and purposes, on the eve of the Judiciary Committee vote, which is Thursday. I'll tell you, as a personal aside, there's something that frosts me about this is, what the hell have they been waiting so long to do this vote in the first place for? Why wasn't this vote 2 weeks ago? Mr. Limbaugh, the Senate runs at a very slow and deliberate pace. Yes, I understand that, but for crying out loud, don't you realize it's time to head these people off at the pass? But Mr. Limbaugh, no matter when they had scheduled a vote, this would have happened. Fine. Schedule the vote anyway. The fact that we haven't taken the vote provided the window of an opportunity here for all of this to occur. Anyway, up next is Vince in parts unknown of Central Florida. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here.
Thank you. First-time caller, sir. Thank you.
You bet.
I just got a question. Do you think there'll ever be another president after Trump?
Do I think there will ever be another president after?
Yeah. What he's going through, it's just amazing.
Oh, of course there will be. Of course there will be. You're echoing. That's what Michael Moore's out there. Michael Moore's saying that Donald Trump is the last president. There will not be another, but not for the reason you just suggested.
It's just horrible what he's going through. You started the program this morning about asking what we can do with this media and the liberal Democrats what we can do. And the only thing I can think of is we might have to march our own marches, take it to the streets. You know, let us get some exposure, because right now the Republicans are not getting any exposure out there. It's always the media. They got the sports. They got a lot of arrows in their quiver. See, and the Republicans are not getting mobilized. And I think they need to go mobile. And I think they really need to do like back in the 60s with the civil rights movement. Get it out there. Get buses, mobile. Take it out of those rallies. Those rallies are nice, and there's a lot of passion. But I think all that passion should really be on the road, where the media will have to report on it, where they're getting shut out. You see, by those rallies, they don't even show those rallies on CNN and all those media outlets.
Well,
but when they're on the road, when they're on the road and in the streets, then they can't stop. Not
this is my point, though. That's not what decent people do. Decent people don't raise hell. They don't destroy properties, don't marching in the streets and causing all kinds of violence and stuff. That's not what decent people do. Decent people have other things to do. They've got other more productive, sensible,